TikTok, Twitter, Twitch, of course, the FM AM dial on KSHP. And of course, I also want to welcome all of you on the Occupy Democrats Network for joining us as well. And we have a big show lined up for you today. I'm going to start the show off today talking about the reasoning why, and I'll give examples. When Republicans get caught, could be a DUI, could be a sex scandal, and then they always start talking about their faith and they start talking about God. Why is that? I'm going to give you plenty of examples for it, and a recent example of somebody in, I believe, North Dakota that got caught with a DUI, and now he's talking about his faith and talking about God. So we will get to that a little bit later on in the program, in just a few minutes, actually. Coming up in hour number 2. Now, you might know this name if you play poker or you're a casual poker player. It's Real Kid Poker, Danny Negreanu, one of the best poker players in the world for the last 30 years. But I'm having him on the show today because, he has a huge platform, huge following on social media. He's active with his comments when it comes to politics. And I'm going to ask him, about the responsibilities of what you should or shouldn't say when you have a huge platform, whether it be X or Facebook or wherever. He's very politically savvy. And I'm going to ask him his opinions on, obviously, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, Donald Trump, and much, much more. So he's going to be joining us in hour number 2, a really smart guest, and really love mixing it up with him. So you might have been following this story coming out of North Dakota. If you haven't, I'll explain. Republican lawmaker out of North Dakota, his name is Nico Rios. And he was arrested just about a week ago or so for DUI refusal, and an open container, said the Williston Police Department. Now, obviously, if you're an elected official, it doesn't matter whether you're a private citizen. A DUI is a very serious crime. At least I find it to be very, very serious. And what we've learned is that Mr. Rios had just left a Christmas party, and he had a bunch of drinks, and he was drunk. But what makes the matter even worse is the way he was treating police officers on the scene. Officers, by the way, that were just doing their job. He used xenophobic comments. He used, I guess you could call it a gay slur, among many other things, to police officers. I'm going to play you just a few seconds of this video so you can get an idea of how this whole thing went down. Have a listen to this.
A breathalyzer? Yes, sir. Are you happy to provide that?
I'm not going to do that. You know why?
Why is that?
Because I'm like 2 blocks away.
Okay.
You guys are picking on me.
Okay.
And
So
you guys are going to regret picking on me.
okay.
Because you don't know who the I am.
Okay. Just 1 second. I'm gonna give you a chance. I'm gonna give you.
Not driving that car that far, so this is
It's literally like 2 blocks away.
Listen, this is what I can do though. Instead of leaving it on that side, I can put it over there. I can put it right over there when it's
No,
more
I want to drop my truck off.
All right,
Okay.
no, we're not doing that. So
We're gonna go to this vehicle.
We're going.
You're
Okay.
Okay, so there you go. A GOP Republican lawmaker using xenophobic comments, homophobic comments, absolutely despicable and disgusting. And I would like to think that we find out who you really are as a human being when you're drunk. If you make anti-Semitic racist comments when you're drunk, that would lead me to believe that you're probably an anti-Semite and you're probably a racist, a la Mel Gibson. If you're a happy drunk and you're a pleasant drunk, then it leads me to believe that you're probably a happy, nice, kind-hearted person. If you're a mean drunk and you attack anybody and everybody around you when you're drunk, it probably leads me to believe that you are a miserable human being. I think we find out who you really are as a person when you've had a few too many to drink. And yes, my personal opinion is Nico Rios is probably a homophobe. He's probably a bigot. Welcome to the MAGA Republican Party. But I also find it interesting that he goes on social media and he says he's sorry. He had to say he was sorry because the evidence was overwhelming. But he didn't apologize to the police officers. He apologized to the GOP in his county first. Don't you think the first people that this guy should have apologized to are the police officers that were doing their job that day, that were extremely professional with this bigot? Yes, I'm going to call him a bigot because I can only go by the way people act, what they say. He's a bigot. And then in his half-hearted apology, besides apologizing to the GOP in his city and, everything else surrounding it, this guy actually starts talking about God. Why is it that when Republicans in so many situations, when they get in trouble doing something wrong, when they get in trouble doing something illegal, they talk about their faith? They talk about God. Why is that? The guy who's preaching God, who just got a DUI with his xenophobic, homophobic comments, this is what he sounded like just a few days ago.
A breathalyzer?
Yes, sir.
Are you happy to provide that?
I'm not gonna do that. You know why?
Why is
I'm
that?
gonna speak it because I'm like 2 blocks away.
Okay.
You guys are picking on me.
Okay.
And
So,
you guys are gonna regret picking on me.
okay.
Because you don't know who the I am.
Just 1 second. I'm gonna give you a chance. I'm gonna give you.
I'm not driving that car that far. So
It's
that's
literally like 2 blocks away.
Listen, this is what I can do though. Instead of leaving it on that side, I can put it over there. I can put it right over there when it's
No,
more
I want to drop my truck off.
All right,
Okay.
no, we're not doing that. So
We're gonna go to this vehicle.
You're a
Get. Okay.
There you go, using homophobic, xenophobic slurs at these officers, but didn't apologize to the officers, did he? But now he wants to talk about faith, and he wants to talk about God. These evangelical Christians on the far right, you can believe whatever you want to believe in your religion, but how convenient that you talk about God or Jesus or whatever you believe in after you get caught. And he's not the only one. Am I saying in the history of this country that a Democrat has never done that? No, I'm not. But why does it seem to be always usually the people on the far right that get in trouble? Do we remember Mark Foley back in 2006, the Florida representative who was forced to resign after it was revealed that he'd sent sexually explicit messages and propositioned teenage congressional pages via email and text? After being caught, Foley talked about his faith and he talked about God, like that has anything to do with it. In 2015, former Representative Dennis Hastert. Do we remember the hush money payments that he used to cover up his history of sexually abusing high school wrestlers he had coached decades before? In a statement, he said after he got caught, "It gives you direction, the perspective where you hold yourself. I'm not saying I'm a humble person. I wouldn't blow my own horn on humility, but I certainly think that a lot of things that I do are certainly guided by my faith." Well, I guess sexually abusing wrestlers, I guess that wasn't guided by your faith. I really don't know. Why do these Republicans always talk about their faith and talk about God after they've been caught? Do you remember Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore, that disgraceful human being that was caught in a mall chasing teenagers, and he was banned from going into that mall, preying on girls that were 14 and 16 years old? A habit of trying to pick up high schoolers, notorious for that. He was banned from a mall for doing that. Well, guess what? Roy Moore, after the stories came out, constantly talked about his Christianity and talked to his evangelical supporters. Another guy caught talks about his faith. Another far-right Republican. Don't even get me started with Jim Jordan. Don't even get me started with his scandal as a wrestling coach at Ohio State University. By the way, I interviewed some of those people. I interviewed some of those kids. And yes, they were kids. And Jim Jordan, as I like to call him, Gymnasium Jordan, is an enabler of sexual assault. Jim Jordan talks about his faith. He talks about it almost every day. He's also said that guns were given to us by God, because Jim Jordan is a nut, and I believe he is a sexual abuser enabler, is what he is, at his time as a wrestling coach at Ohio State University. That's Gymnasium Jordan for you. And do I even need to bring up Lauren Boebert, ladies and gentlemen? A woman who talks about her faith all the time. Lauren Boebert was committing a sexual act in public at a theater watching Beetlejuice with her date. We all saw the video. She lied about it until the video came out, and then she retracted. But she talks a lot about her faith. There's a nice Christian woman performing a sexual act with her hand on a man in public. This is what Lauren Boebert said recently. Quote, "God back at the center of our country and defeat the enemy, destroying from within. God is on our side. The blood has been applied." She spoke at a Bible study group. I wonder if those Bible study people would support somebody who perform sexual acts in public with children around in a theater. But these are some of the people that say they're some of the most religious people around, the good, wholesome Christians, right? I mean, it really is sickening to me. And Kirk Cameron is another nut job. Kirk Cameron has always been a nut job. And I want to play you a clip because Kirk Cameron says a lot of crazy things, whether it be social media, on his website. He's a far-right radical nut. He's no different than the GOP House Speaker, maybe even worse if that's possible. Maybe he has an accountability partner too. I don't know. But Kirk Cameron says a lot of crazy stuff. It wasn't that long ago that Kirk Cameron was really attacking our schools, our public schools, and how bad the public school system is. Now, listen, I'll be the first one to admit in Las Vegas, our public school system isn't great. You know, no school system is perfect. It has its issues. But this was Kirk Cameron speaking out against schools. Have a listen to this.
Since the pandemic, we've been made grossly aware of the inaccurate and the immoral things that the public school system has been teaching our children and our grandchildren. And it's up to us as parents to cultivate the hearts and minds and souls of our children toward what is good, toward what is right, beautiful, and true. And the public school system, unfortunately, has not been working with us, but actively working against us. In my opinion, the public school system has become public enemy number one.
Listen to what Kirk Cameron just said. He said the public school system is enemy number one. Forget about those who commit serious crimes in this country, right? Murderers, rapists, you name it. They're not enemy number one, according to Kirk Cameron, but our public school system, according to Kirk Cameron, is enemy number one. Now, obviously, that's a ridiculous statement, but there's a point I'm trying to make here. Why was Kirk Cameron going after our public school systems? Well, I'll give you a hint. It has something to do with money, because a couple seconds later, here's what he had to say.
I think you need to see the movie because you may be wondering, what can I do about it? How can I be part of the solution? The Homeschool Awakening will give you answers.
Yeah, Kirk Cameron was promoting a movie because Kirk Cameron doesn't care about our public school system. He doesn't care about your kids. He might appear to be passionate. He's a professional actor. Kirk Cameron was promoting a movie. This was about money for Kirk Cameron. And that's why he was speaking out against our public schools. Just like so many others, like the Dinesh D'Souza's of the world. Does Dinesh D'Souza really believe that Donald Trump won the 2020 election? No, he doesn't. The felon doesn't believe that. Dinesh D'Souza was promoting a movie, 2,000 Mules, which was debunked in every second of the movie. But Dinesh D'Souza was making all these appearances because he was trying to promote a movie. Kirk Cameron was speaking out against our public school system, saying it was enemy number one, making ridiculous statements so that he can get attention. Why? So that Kirk Cameron could make a movie. And a guy like a Matt Walsh, who I believe to be a bigot, because I think everybody, call me crazy, but I think everybody should be treated as equals. Doesn't matter whether you're transgender, gay, straight, purple, orange. I believe everybody should be treated as equals in this country and shouldn't be judged on their sexual orientation. Obviously, Matt Walsh does the exact opposite, right? Matt Walsh takes the opportunity every time and attacks transgenders, attacks people who maybe might not be like him. Why does Matt Walsh do this? Is it because he's going by his religion? Is it about, moral high ground? What is it? No. The reason why Matt Walsh does this is so that he can sell his books. Are you seeing a theme here? And make money. Sadly, Matt Walsh has a following. I would use, his videos or any of his products as toilet paper, quite frankly. But Matt Walsh makes money spreading hatred and bigotry. Sadly, sometimes it works in our society. I wish it didn't. Same thing with Candace Owens. Candace Owens is a Democrat. She's an opportunist. She decided to one day wake up and be a Republican, not because she has Republican core values and she's this nice Christian lady. She did it because she knew she could make money off of it. And that's what she's doing. She knew that if she turned to a Republican, she knew it, that she would make money and that she would sell books and make more appearances on Fox News because Candace Owens, Larry Elder, Leo 2.0 are frauds. They only decide to become Republican and kiss the ring of Donald Trump and attack transgenders and drag queen reading and blame Joe Biden for every problem in this country so that they can create controversy, creating clicks, creating money. That's what these people are all about. They're about making money for themselves. And if you get caught with a DUI, like this guy did in North Dakota with his despicable statements he made to these police officers, who, by the way, I thought were very patient with him and very professional, then all of a sudden it's so convenient to talk about your faith. I find that very ironic and very interesting. Very, very interesting. And before I take phone calls, for the people out there that call themselves, good, wholesome Christians, or really whatever religion you are, why do you support Donald Trump? If you're a religious zealot and you support Donald Trump, aren't you a hypocrite? Doesn't Trump embody every one of the 7 deadly sins? I mean, I think he does. Vainglory and pride. Trump's ego drives him. He's a narcissist. Is there anybody that has a bigger ego in the world than Donald Trump? Donald Trump's only commitment is not to the United States of America. No, not at all. It's not to people like you and me. Donald Trump's only commitment is to himself. I truly don't believe he cares about his family, his wife or ex-wives, his kids. Donald Trump only cares about Donald Trump. What about wrath? If you want to talk about the 7 deadly sins, what about Donald Trump's temper? Do we remember the statements he made about John McCain? I don't respect him because he was captured. Anybody that speaks out against Trump, he lashes out at. Isn't that a deadly sin? I don't know. I could be wrong. What about sloth? Over 25% of Donald Trump's presidency when he was in office was on the golf course. 25%. And yet this is the same guy who attacked Barack Obama for playing too much golf. Hey, I got a news stat for you. I got a stat. Donald Trump played more golf in 4 years than Obama did in 8. Where's the criticism now? How about gluttony or lack of self-control? Donald Trump won't listen to any of his advisors. He won't listen to anybody around him. Donald Trump won't listen to his lawyers. He certainly didn't listen to his wife's cyberbullying initiative. By the way, where's Melania Trump? I don't see her in any of these Christmas photos. I do find that interesting. He lets his impulses rule. He can't contain himself. He can't even say Merry Christmas without attacking somebody or wishing somebody rot in hell. Lust. Do I need to talk about Donald Trump's Playboy past? His Howard Stern interviews? The fact that he said he would date his daughter? The Access Hollywood tape? Grab him by the P word? The womanizing he's had his entire life? And what about envy? There is no doubt that Donald Trump envies Barack Obama. Talks about Barack Obama all the time. Obsessed with Barack Obama. We remember the birther situation, his Twitter tantrums, going after people that are admired, going after people that are more successful with him, going after people that have decency, that are actual heroes. Why do you think Donald Trump craps on our brave men and women in uniform all the time? Calls them losers, even those who have lost their lives, lost limbs. Why? Well, let's be honest. All those people are heroes. You serve this country honorably. You're a hero. Donald Trump is envious of heroes because he wants to be loved. He wants to be that guy. And what about greed? Speaking of the 7 deadly sins. Now, Trump claims he doesn't do anything for the money, but to the contrary, he does everything for the money. It's all about his brand. It's all about making money. That's why he ran for president of the United States, because he thought it would help his brand. And sadly, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that have been donated to his campaign because he said it was going to use it to fight election fraud. I want to open up the phone lines right now, but I bring up those 7 deadly sins because so many of these evangelical Christians out there have no problem supporting Donald Trump. Is there any bigger sinner in office right now than Donald Trump? You tell me. 702-221-7283. Why is it that Republicans, when they screw up, when they make a big mistake, break the law even, they resort to God? 702-221-7283, the number to call. Let's start off with Jeff. Jeff, what's going on?
Hey, dude, I don't want to talk about God right now because, being a devout agnostic, I'd rather talk about school because you brought up the whole school point. Is it cool for me to talk about that right now?
I mean, that's one of our topics if you want to talk about Kirk Cameron. I mean, do you agree with Kirk Cameron?
Yes. Hell no, dude.
Okay.
As I mentioned to you yesterday, I used to teach at Richmond High School.
Yep.
I taught English and ESL. I had 179th graders, 20 languages, 25 gangs. Most of the kids read at third grade level.
Yep.
Let me start off by saying, me being a white guy came in and the kids would look at me, oh, damn, it's the man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when they started seeing the books that I taught, like I taught To Kill a Mockingbird,
Right.
I got into racism. I went to Barnes & Noble. I was going to buy books with my own money. When the manager learned what I was going to do, he donated a class set of Sula by Toni Morrison, and I Know Why the Cage Bird
But can I ask
by,
you, may I ask you, because
my-
the attacks on our teachers, and I know you've been a teacher for a long time, and I respect that very much. It seems like to me, the attacks on public schools, the attacks on our teachers, you've heard it, they're indoctrinating our kids. They seem to all be coming from the alt-right. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I definitely agree with that, and here's my answer to them. I mean, I became a teacher, and I'll say that at least 98% of teachers become teachers because they want to help kids.
Yep.
It's not about
I agree.
indoctrinating, although certainly the books that I taught would get me locked up by DeSantis and the
You're probably right.
I call him Death Santis, just like I call Trump Trumpelfinskin. But here's the deal. What I did, and my whole goal was really getting the kids not to learn how to just think and write, but to raise their self-esteem. And I got them to do that by like I said, back in '96, I hooked up with a listserv, and I took the kids' autobiographical incident papers, hooked up with 27 other schools around the world. They got published.
But don't you
All
find
of a sudden they want to learn.
Don't you find you find it interesting though that when I play this Kirk Cameron clip, and I think he's a lunatic, but when I play this clip, a couple seconds later, he's promoting a movie. He says these things about he says that the public schools are our number one enemy. Very similar language to Donald Trump when he says the media is the enemy of the people. Kirk Cameron is trying to sell something. He was trying to sell a movie. So he says something controversial. I mean, I find that very interesting that when these people say crazy things, their motive is to make money.
Well, and that's one of their arguments they used against teachers' unions. They said, they're charging way too much. I mean, dude, I had a sign outside of school I taught at saying, we'll teach for food.
Yeah.
We're not in it for the money.
I know
We're
you're
not
not.
in it for ourselves.
I know
We're
that.
basically
Yep.
in it to help the kids to learn about the world.
Jeff, I know
and
that about
does
you.
involve some policy,
let me be very clear. I know that about people like you. Okay, I know. I can hear it in your voice how passionate you are. You didn't become a teacher so that you could become rich. You became a teacher so that you could help kids and educate kids and be a positive influence in their life. And all these people on the far right that are saying the teachers are, out of the 300,000 teachers across the country, is there a very small percentage of teachers that might be doing some inappropriate things? Sure. And I want them all to be fired. 99.9% of teachers throughout the country do it for the right reasons, just like yourself. And Jeff, it is good to hear from you. I got to go to the next call, my friend.
Let me just get another 10 seconds.
Sure.
Back in the 70s, I debated federal education funding because one of the things that the right's doing now is they're trying to get voucher money so they can have their alt-right schools funded.
Right.
That is bullshit.
Yep.
And like I said, go to globalclue.org. I've got a plan to really help schools, save schools. Listen.
Amen,
you're
brother.
great. Remember, don't refer to him as Trump. It's
Yes.
Trumpelfinskin.
And I will and I will add something else, Jeff. I gave you 10 seconds, just like Stormy Daniels gave Donald Trump. So I had to make a joke there. Jeff, good to hear from you, sir. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. 702-221. I had to do it. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. And again, that number, if you would like to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-7283 is the number to call. 702-221-SAVE. Let's go to Gary. Gary's next on Pushing the Limits. Hello, Gary.
Hey, I just want to say to everybody out there in radio world that Gary is a non-practicing atheist, but I like Christmas. I get along with Christians, and in fact, maybe clinical Paul should weigh in.
But Gary, I'm not saying that I don't get along with Christians. I would never. I have a lot of good friends of mine that are great people.
No, you're not saying that.
Yeah, what I am saying is this: people that do bad things, people that commit crimes, it seems like only then do they talk about their faith. And some of these people, not all of them, but some of these
that's
people,
what I'm getting to.
Right? But some of these people, when they do something wrong, they want to talk about their faith.
I don't know why I guess that's true, and I'm not sure why. But there's enough hypocrites and there's enough brainwashing to go around.
Yeah.
And my problem with you is you don't pick on Democrats enough. I know you get around to it when you can.
Well, here's what I'll say to that,
how you
Gary.
feel about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Let me respond. Yes. Let me respond to what you just said. And we'll fix our problem here on social media. Some people are having trouble hearing the callers. I have criticism for Democrats. I want to be very clear on that. And listen, people might be surprised to hear this. I did not vote for Hillary Clinton. I didn't vote for Donald Trump either. I did not vote for Barack Obama. The reason why I didn't vote for Obama versus John McCain is because I respected, and I always will respect John McCain. I think he would have been an okay president. I think Sarah Palin would have been a disaster of a vice president, but I respect John McCain. Barack Obama, John McCain, good human beings. Decent people. Mitt Romney, don't always agree with his policies. Decent human being. I would have been okay with Mitt Romney becoming the president. I made a mistake in 2016, and I regret it. While I didn't vote for Donald Trump, because I've always despised the man, I also didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. I made a mistake, and I can sit here and I can tell you that. I lean to the left on social issues, and I am not embarrassed to say that. But I also voted for 8 Republicans in the 2022 midterms, none of whom, by the way, were MAGA cultist supporters. So I'm capable of voting both sides. I don't want to be affiliated with either party per se, if that makes sense, Gary. But I do criticize Democrats. It's just in 2023, heading into 2024, a lot of my criticism is for the alt-right MAGA Republicans. That's all I'm saying, Gary.
Very good. That's why I call you. Now, can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't mean to insinuate that you talk too much.
Go ahead. I do. Go ahead.
I had a couple of drinks. I'm well behaved.
Okay, good.
I'm probably a worse person when I'm sober. This is what I have to pick on you. This is why I need to pick on you once in a while.
Okay, go ahead.
Because in another world, in another universe, you would have been a great lawyer because everything to you is proof. And where's the proof that President Trump referred to soldiers as suckers? That's all hearsay, or that's all.
Sure, and I'll answer that. I'll answer that for you, Gary. And I appreciate the phone call. I'll answer that for you. So first of all, to me, evidence is proof. You've had distinguished people, generals, multiple people that are on record as saying that Donald Trump had made those statements. Why do I believe it to be true? Not just by those statements by those generals who admitted it, but the comments that Donald Trump has made on the record about John McCain. Agree or disagree with John McCain, you had Donald Trump that was poo-pooing on John McCain because he was captured as a POW. If the former president of the United States is willing to make a statement like that in front of a crowd and a microphone, then I believe that he also called many of those brave men and women in uniform who served this country honorably and those who died losers. You're damn right I'm going to believe it. Number to call, 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, it's 702-221-SAVE, 702-221-7283. Patty's next. Hello, Patty.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Patty.
I'm good. I'll forgive you for not voting for Hillary, but I have some things. I totally agree with you. I'm starting on a book about fake Christians. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, Catholic school, 12 years, and saw hypocrisies happening at that time. So I'm kind of like getting PTSD about those times. Do you see any hope for the future? And if so, what do we need to do?
As far as politically, our leaders, is that kind of where you're going with that?
Kind of where I'm going, yes.
Well, it's a good question, Patty. I'll try to give you the best answer I can.
Okay, thanks.
People always ask me, when is this MAGA cult going to end? When is MAGA Donald Trump going to end? And quite frankly, Patty, and I'm not saying that I'm rooting for this to happen, but it's when Donald Trump is no longer on this earth. That's the first thing I would say.
You're a lot kinder than I.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to be, I guess you could say, what's the word I'm looking
Diplomatic?
for here? Yeah, diplomatic about it.
That's good.
The problem, I have a feeling that if Donald Trump doesn't win the presidency in 2024, slowly but surely, things are going to get better. That the MAGA cultists out there are finally maybe going to realize Trump might be out of the picture. He's not going to run again. And maybe things will get better. But there's no question that we are more divided now as a country politically than we've ever been. I'm 43 years old. I think we're more divided with race relations. And yes, I do put a lot of that on Donald Trump, and I believe he gave people allowed people to be maybe a little bit more comfortable in their bigotry. And you just see it everywhere in society today, and it's really disgusting. I hope I answered your question. I tried to.
Yes, and I'm a grandmother. I'm a lot older than you, but I have 2 grandsons, and I'm just like, oh, please let things get better for them. Because Roe v. Wade was passed the year I graduated from high school.
Yeah, I can't believe it. I really can't believe that there are Republicans out there, so many of them, that want to tell a woman what to do with their body.
Thank you.
It's just so unbelievable. As if it's not a difficult decision enough for a woman to make.
Thank you so much.
That there are evangelical Christians and people on the far right and Mike Johnsons of the world that don't know what it's like to be pregnant. They don't know what that is like to go through something like that, and yet they want to tell a woman what to do with her own body. There are Republicans in office today. In office, I'm talking about real lawmakers. They believe that, God forbid, if a young teenage girl is raped, she should be forced to have that rape child. How can you have a conversation with somebody like that? I can't.
Well, especially when they're obviously, like you mentioned, Lauren Boebert, you mentioned these guys, they're not at all, good people.
No, they're not.
So
they're
stop
fools.
Trying to tell,
They're not.
And
they're
how
not,
many abortions do you think they paid for? How many abortions?
Probably quite a few. They're not. They're not lawmakers. They're noisemakers.
Right.
That's all they are. They don't care about any of us. They only care about themselves. It's the MAGA cult way. And unless somebody wants to convince me otherwise, that's always been my feeling on the Lauren Boeberts, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Matt Gaetz, the Kevin
McCarthy. And they make women look bad and men look bad. Yes. But anyway, I will definitely, I won't keep you on the phone, but I will definitely reach out, maybe get a quote or 2 from you for my book.
Thank you. Well, that would be very nice. I'd be honored to do that.
Ryan.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. 702-221-7283. If you're just joining us, we're talking about this lawmaker in North Dakota. GOP lawmaker. His name is Nico Rios. Well, Nico was arrested for DUI. He owned what he did. He said he went to a Christmas party and he had too much to drink. But if that's not bad enough, you elect an official and he gets caught with a DUI. Look at the video and look at the way he treated the police officers on the scene. He used homophobic slurs, xenophobia. He played the card of, don't you know who I am? And his behavior is absolutely despicable. Why is it, though, that when they get caught, when their behavior is despicable, in this case, when they break the law, they turn to God and they talk about their faith? In this case, an evangelical Christian who happens to be a Republican who wants your support still and wants people to feel sorry for him, but the first person he apologized to were not the police officers. Oh, no. He apologized to the local GOP people in his district. Didn't apologize to the police officers. Nothing in his apology were to the law enforcement officials that he disrespected. They should be praised for their professionalism. But he didn't apologize to them. Why did he apologize to his base? Because he wants to remain in power, because we have another person on the far right who only cares about themselves. All right, number to call, 702-221-7283. Again, that number, 702-221-SAVE. Let's go to Edward. Edward is next. What's up, Edward?
Hey, Brian, what's going on, man?
What's up?
Happy late Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and all that good stuff.
Yes, sir. Happy holidays. What's on your mind, my friend?
I like your show, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I've been drinking, too.
Well, I hope you're not driving. I hope you're not driving.
No, God.
Okay,
No,
good.
God, no.
Good.
No, man, I've been kind of thinking about what you said about everything. And, I was just going to ask you, man, like, where's the line at? Seriously, we're not all going to have peace. We're not always going to be happy in this world, but where's the line, man? Seriously.
Well,
I'm talking about the one people are snorting. I'm talking about where's the line in general?
Well, I'll say this.
Go ahead.
If you're a lawmaker, you shouldn't be breaking the law. That's where I draw the line.
Nobody should be.
And if you break the law, if you get a DUI, and then you hurl a bunch of homophobic slurs at the officers when you're getting arrested, you should never be allowed to be in office ever again. That's number one. Number two, you shouldn't be inciting an insurrection, lying about an election, attacking our democracy. The fact that Donald Trump has so many supporters still is mind-blowing to me and mesmerizing. There's a line that you should never cross. No human being is perfect, and I would never say that. But there are so many politicians that are still in office today that have clearly crossed the line. I believe Donald Trump did it before he was ever president of the United States. When you attack a POW in John McCain and you say you don't respect him because he was captured, that's a line that cannot be crossed. And to me, in my opinion, it should have disqualified him from becoming the president of the United States.
Well, let me ask you, did you get a stimulus check?
I did. This was a little while ago. Yep.
Okay, you remember the stimulus check? Did you cash
do.
it? Did you cash it?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Okay, then you did support Trump because his name was on that check.
No, I don't support. I don't support. Okay, so let me.
If anyone,
I disagree.
If anyone got a stimulus check and didn't like Trump, they didn't have to cash that check.
Okay, so let me ask you.
On the lower right-hand corner. I remember that check.
Okay, so let me ask you a question then, because I disagree.
You can hate Trump, but you can love money.
I disagree with you.
You
Just because you accept a check from somebody doesn't mean that you support them. It means that
then don't bite the hand that feeds.
You haven't always worked for people that you support, I would imagine, but yet you still cash that paycheck from that company. I know a lot of people that work at Walmart, they don't support the company, but they want to work and they need work and they cash their paycheck. So I disagree with you. Just because somebody's name is on the check that you don't like doesn't mean that you have to support that person. So I would disagree with that premise respectfully.
So if you're in it, if you don't like him as much as you do, then you have been like, the hell that. I don't want anything to do with him. I don't want his name on anything I touch. I want zero.
But Donald Trump didn't. But Donald Trump didn't write you that check. It was the government that paid for it. That didn't come out of Donald Trump's pocket.
No, but it had his name on it.
So what?
There was some support of it.
So what?
So what? If you don't like Trump,
But by that standard, have you ever used something that was made in China? Does that mean you support President Xi? And that, I mean, I don't understand.
I do support China.
Okay, well, you can. That's fine. But I'm
on my iPhone, for God's sake.
I'm using that. So if I'm eating Russian food, does that mean I support Vladimir Putin? I mean, by your standards, that's what you're saying.
You could.
I know, but do you understand? Come on, Edward. You understand what I'm saying?
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time, dude.
All right. Well, that's fair. You can give me a hard time. That's okay. I don't mind that.
Good. It's a Wednesday, but it feels like a Monday.
Fair enough, Edward. Well, listen, I hope you have drive safe. I hope you have a wonderful New Year, my friend, and I appreciate you calling. Thank you so much.
Likewise, man. Happy New Year to you and Nunchuck and everyone else.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. I appreciate that. You drive safe, sir. Thank you. All right, number to call, 702-221-7283. And again, that number, 702-221-7283. So here's what we're going to do, folks. We are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to play you a little bit of audio from Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan is a guy that I would consider to be a dope and a conspiracy theorist. He's spread medical misinformation on his show, but he has a huge platform. Joe Rogan got caught the other day because he criticizes Joe Biden a lot, but he got caught because he didn't actually pay attention to the story, and it backfired on him, and we have the audio to prove it. The number to call, by the way, if you want to be a part of the show before we go to break, 702-221-7283. And again, that number, 702-221-SAVE, 702-221-7283. When we come back, Joe Rogan getting caught in an embarrassing moment on his own show. Take a break. Be back right after this. It's Pushing the Limits, part of the Occupy Democrats Network, right here on KSHP.
Hey, everybody. Are you struggling?
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits. So glad you could join us. Also part of the Occupy Democrats Network. I appreciate all of you watching on the Facebook fan page. You're watching me on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, or on the FM AM dial right here in Las Vegas on KSHP. I appreciate all of you tuning in and watching. I talk a lot about right-wing hypocrisy on this show. You know, walk the walk, talk the talk. You don't walk the walk. And you know, I've never been a big Joe Rogan fan. Obviously, he has a lot of fans out there, right? I mean, I grew up listening to Howard Stern as a kid, and it's one of the reasons why I got into radio. And I think you've had a lot of imitators and a lot of people that have been wannabe Howard Stern type people. Joe Rogan trashes Howard Stern a lot. Joe Rogan is a guy that, didn't he make his fame besides the UFC commentating, but didn't he do that stupid reality TV show? I forgot what it was. Survivor? What is it called? Is that what it is? And then he decided to do, not Survivor, he decided to do his own podcast. Fear Factor, that's what it was. Thank you. He decided to do his own podcast, and, you know, let's be honest, it's one of the most popular podcasts on the planet. I've never liked Joe Rogan. I never found him to be very intelligent. I think he's kind of a meathead, and he spreads a lot of misinformation, particularly medical misinformation on his show. He takes a lot of time to rag on Joe Biden, but rarely ever criticizes Donald Trump for anything. And when I say medical misinformation, when he talked about how he treated himself for COVID as if he's some sort of PhD infectious disease doctor. And yes, I do believe people were hurt. Maybe even people died because they listened to Joe Rogan. And I think when you have a huge platform like he has, you have to be very careful. I feel the same way about Aaron Rodgers. Listen, if you don't want to take the vaccines, I've never said that vaccines should be mandated, and I probably never will. But that's your personal decision. To be trying to tell other people what to do with their bodies is absurd. And Joe Rogan's always been that guy where he thinks that he's right about everything, but he's not. And he spreads misinformation, and we have a perfect opportunity to play some audio from the Joe Rogan show, where Joe Rogan embarrasses himself. He likes to make fun of Joe Biden on a daily basis. Biden in the bunker, you know, the right-wing talking points. He's senile. He has Alzheimer's. You hear that a lot from people on the far right who don't know anything about Joe Biden's medical history. Of course, he's not the same guy he was 20 years ago. The guy's over 80 years old. But if you listen to Joe Rogan, you'd think that he was his personal physician. Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Joe Rogan embarrassing himself on his own podcast. Have a listen to this. This is Joe Rogan thinking that he's talking about something that Joe Biden said, mocking Joe Biden for it, and listen to his co-host correct him.
Well, you know, there's people that voted for Biden that are doing it now. They're like, what did I do?
Right.
Like, what did I choose? Like, how is this guy?
Yeah, you just can't listen to an interview where he's saying some of the stuff he says that just makes no sense at all. It's like you can't listen to those interviews and feel like you made a good decision. I don't know how you could.
Did you hear what he said like yesterday or a couple of days ago?
Mm-mm.
He was talking about the Revolutionary War. He's like, one of the reasons why we lost the Revolutionary War, one of the problems with the Revolutionary War was they didn't have enough airports.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I saw that. Like, what the hell?
Like, pull him.
It's crazy.
If you had any other job and you were talking like that,
yeah,
they would go, hey, you're done.
A few moments later.
The same stable genius that said the biggest problem we had in the Revolutionary War is we didn't have enough airports. Whoa.
Yeah, that's it.
Whoa.
Right. What?
Just for the record.
Is that fake?
It's not fake, but he was referencing Trump saying that. Here's what Trump saying it in 2019.
Oh.
Donald Trump said something about that. He didn't say Jesus. He said a stable genius, and that's where the transcription.
Oh. Let me hear what it says. What did he say?
In June of 1775, the Continental Congress created a unified army out of the revolutionary forces encamped around Boston and New York, and named after the great George Washington, Commander-in-Chief. The Continental Army suffered a bitter winter of Valley Forge, found glory across the waters of the Delaware, and seized victory from Cornwallis of Yorktown. Our army manned the airport. It ran the ramparts. It took over the airports. It did everything it had to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So he up.
Yeah, but I feel like
Took over
that's
the airport.
you can tell
All right,
too, it
cut
sounds
it right
like
there.
a little different. He's like,
So let me be very clear on this. Donald Trump didn't F up. You did, Joe Rogan. You went on your show without doing clearly any show prep at all and assumed that Joe Biden made those statements about the airports. And you mocked him for it. You made fun of him for it. You went with the right-wing narrative that Joe Biden's in the bunker, he's got Alzheimer's, because you're a clown. And then it had to take your co-host to correct it in a stupid, clownish type way. Oh, wait, Joe Biden didn't actually say that. He was mocking Donald Trump for saying that. And to the credit of the producer, actually played the clip of Donald Trump saying it. And instead of Joe Rogan ragging on Donald Trump, instead of Joe Rogan saying, you know what, I'm the one who just screwed up. I'm sorry. I didn't hear the audio. I didn't do my due diligence. I apologize. He said, oh, it was Donald Trump that effed up. And then they move on. But that's what these right-wing talk show hosts do. And yes, Joe Rogan is a right-wing host with right-wing, radical, conspiracy theorist views. But isn't that what so many of these people on the right do on these conservative talk shows? They say things that are lies. They say things that are not true, whether it be the 2020 election was stolen, or it could be a statement that they think Joe Biden said, but he was actually mocking Donald Trump for saying it. They blame Joe Biden for a train derailment when we learn, or Pete Buttigieg, when we learn that when Donald Trump was president, there were 3 times as many train derailments when he was there. And the transportation secretary never showed up to any of those train derailments, but all these people on the far right are going to blame Joe Biden. How could he not show up to this? They're going to blame Pete Buttigieg. And then when Donald Trump shows up with that Superman cape to a fast food restaurant and buys 3 people a meal, somehow he's some sort of hero. He shows up to some disaster in another country and tosses out paper towels. He's supposed to be some sort of hero. Oh, I'm not making this stuff up. There are people in this country, even young kids with parents that are probably very uneducated, that look to Donald Trump as some sort of hero. The heroes of this country are the brave men and women in uniform who serve this country. Yeah, the ones that Donald Trump calls losers. Those are the heroes of this country. The brave firefighters that save lives every day, that go into burning homes and risk their own life to save others. The brave police officers in this country. Yes, there are some bad cops out there, but the overwhelming majority of police officers are good people and they're heroes, and they sign up the oath to the Constitution to serve and protect. Those are the real heroes in this country. Brave people who risk their own lives and put everything on the line to save others. Donald Trump is the opposite of that. This is the man who dodged the military multiple times. He's never risked anything in his life. Anything. Nothing. But people in this country want to look to Donald Trump as some sort of hero? What has he done in his life? I want to hear. If you're a MAGA Republican and you're a huge Make America Great Donald Trump supporter, what has Donald Trump done in his life that would lead you to believe that he is some sort of hero? What has Donald Trump done in his life that would lead you to believe that he's strong, that he's tough? I would lead you to believe at least that Donald Trump has never been in any physical altercation in his life. Donald Trump has never fought for anything in his life. The only thing maybe Donald Trump has fought for in his life is chasing tail. That would be it as far as I'm concerned. Number to call, 702-221-7283. And again, the number if you'd like to be a part of the program, 702-221-SAVE, 702-221-7283. Why are there people on the far right that characterize Donald Trump to be some sort of hero or some sort of Superman tough guy? Help me understand that. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Paul. Paul is next. What's up, Paul?
Hey, man. You know, I think I've called before on this. I had this conversation last night with my buddies at dinner. It's this toxic masculinity, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this, I have to defeat my opponent, stand on top of them, piss on their grave, and I have to be the tough guy. And if I don't win, and if I'm not first place, I'm a loser, and I can't handle it. And that's really what this all boils down to is That's why when you talk to people, they can never admit that they're wrong because they're so prideful. And then, like you said, I think I called you a week or two ago, anytime you confront them on facts, they always pivot to Hunter Biden's laptop. Like, who the hell cares?
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
You're right.
It's always a pivot to something else because they don't want to lose. They don't want to admit that they're wrong. They don't want to educate themselves. They just want to be right, and they want to win every single battle and every single argument. And I just don't think you can break the cult until Donald Trump is no longer around, because the reality is, even if he, let's just say he wins next 24, God forbid our country's still around, they'll still write his name in 32, 36, 40. I mean, that's how sick and twisted these people are. Even when he dies in 50 years, they'll be writing his name in because they're like, he's not really dead. He's running with JFK, and Abraham Lincoln's going to be his chief of his cabinet and his Speaker of the House. And it's like, what are you talking about? He's really alive. Look,
can I ask you a question,
I heard about
Paul?
Abraham Lincoln.
I want to ask you a question because people have asked me this, and I give my answer, but I'm curious to hear yours. When you hear the slogan, because that's what it is, "Make America Great Again," what does that mean to you?
It's white grievance. And I say this as a white person. I learned this. Listen, when the same with Colin Kaepernick happened, I'll be very transparent. I threw out my jersey. And then when George Floyd happened, I really opened my eyes. And I know it probably shouldn't have taken that, but America's never been great for everybody. It was never great for black people. Mm-hmm. Women couldn't vote until the 1920s.
Correct.
We stole the land from the Hawaiians. We murdered the people and Native Americans. Mm-hmm. And even now we try to tell women what to do with their body. I mean, we didn't even let black people vote until the 1960s. And any Trump supporter you ask them, when was it great for everybody? They'll say, oh, the Second Amendment or Hunter Biden's laptop, because that's the level of their maturity. It's never been great for everybody.
Yeah, and you know what? I wanted to just add something real quickly, and then I want you to finish. But what you just mentioned about women not being able to vote, which, by the way, wasn't that long ago. Jason Whitlock, who I think is a right-wing buffoon and always has been, I think he's despicable. He was speaking last week at that Turning Point USA moronic Klan event that they had over there in Arizona. And Whitlock actually made the statement on a stage that he believes we should go back to one person in a family being allowed to vote, the man of the family. He actually said that on a debate stage, and some of the MAGA cultists were cheering him on. Jason Whitlock, I don't know if he actually believes that, but is there any reasonable human being with an IQ over 20 that's not a bigot or a chauvinistic pig that thinks that women in society shouldn't be able to vote in 2023? I mean, it's amazing to me, and they pay this guy to speak.
The people that crucified Jesus, Brian, for healing the sick and feeding the hungry, if the only reason they didn't have red hats on is because they weren't invented for 1,000 years later. That's the only reason they didn't have MAGA hats on. And I really believe that. If Jesus came today and ran against Trump, who do you think would win? Who would the Republicans support? The guy that sexually assaults women and bangs his wife with a porn star, or the guy that cures cancer and feeds the hungry? Which person do you think the Republicans would vote? Honestly, who would they choose?
It's a really good question, and I don't have an immediate answer for you, but I got to tell you, I think they would probably choose Donald Trump. I think there's a cult. There's a cult base. I don't think every Republican would vote that way, but I do think there's it's getting larger and larger, and it's a MAGA cult base within the Republican Party. And when people tell me it's not a cult, I ask them a very simple question. Have you seen malarkey flags on the back of pickup trucks? Have you seen Joe Biden flags next to the Confederate flag in front of homes in the South? Have you seen that sort of stuff? Do you see people wearing Biden hats? And then their response to me will be, well, that's because he didn't win the election. It's Trump that won the election. And, they go by the crowds that Donald Trump had at his events. And somehow, because if Donald Trump has 100 people waiting outside, some event or something, that must mean that he won the 2020 election. You cannot reason with these people.
No. Hey, can I ask you, maybe you can educate me, and I heard this about a week ago on someone talking, and maybe you can tell me, and I don't want to get to the gun debate because that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
When the Second Amendment was written, were women allowed to own firearms?
No, they were not.
How about black people?
No, they were not.
Because they were only counted as 2/3 of a person in the Constitution. So I'm just saying, for all of you middle-aged white fake Christians, otherwise known as evangelicals, because that's what you are, the next time you keep falling back on the Second Amendment, just remember that the white slave owners that wrote that amendment didn't want women to vote, women to have credit, black people weren't considered a whole person, and neither one of them were allowed to own a firearm. So when they keep going back on that, it's a ridiculous statement because it was written when everybody wasn't considered equal.
It's a very good point that you bring up. And let me ask you a question here, because a lot of people on the far right, all they want to talk about is the border crisis, right? The border crisis. Yet when Donald Trump was president, or even when George W. Bush was president, I didn't hear a lot of Republicans complaining about the border. But here's my opinion on why they keep doing that, besides to try to score political points. And I do believe that we have a crisis at the border that needs to be attended to by both Republicans and Democrats, for the record. And I want people to come into this country legally. I know that some people don't have the means to do so, and I feel for them. Are there a small percentage of bad people coming into this country illegally? Sure, and I want to stop that. But with that being said, I do feel like the large contingent of the MAGA right that happen to be white, they want this country to continue to look like them. And I think that it scares them.
Yes.
And that's why many of these MAGA Republicans want to falsely claim, like the Kerry Lakes of the world, they would lead you to believe that a lot of these people that are coming into this country undocumented are all criminals, and they're going to rape your kids, and they're going to invade your home, when actually per capita you have a much better chance of being the victim of a crime with a U.S. citizen than you do somebody undocumented. But you'll never hear a far-right MAGA Republican talk about that, and I believe it's because they want this country to look white. That's why.
You're totally right, and that's when Kevin McCarthy said, what is it, like 2 weeks ago? He's like, look, we look like a white country club, and they look more diverse.
Yeah.
Who has more diversity? Who put the first, and for all the right-wingers that you going, yeah, but the KKK was there. Okay, who was the first person to put a black man into the presidency? Democrats.
Right.
Who was the first person to put a black woman as vice president? The Democrats. Who has more diversity in Congress? The Democrats. And all this is, and I say this as a Christian, they want straight white Christian America, but it's okay if you sexually assault a woman and cheat on your third wife, and give a divorce multiple times with a fourth part. That's okay. But if you're an immigrant coming from Mexico, you're dirty and you're a rapist.
Yeah.
Even though Trump's already been held liable.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you 150%. You are 100% correct. I think your phone was getting a little fuzzy there, but it's always good to hear from you, and I appreciate the call, sir. Thank you so much. You are 100% right. I think you make a lot of great points. Listen, I never have come on this show before and said that if you voted for Donald Trump, you're a racist. I wouldn't make a claim like that. I actually know people that are friends of mine that voted for Trump twice. They're not racist. Never have I ever said on this show, and never will I ever say, that all Republicans are bad people, because they're not. But I do say this: the overwhelming majority and the large contingent base of the Republican Party today is a MAGA cultist base that rests their head on lies, conspiracy theories. They try to scare you, and they're incensed with their bigotry and their attacks on the LGBT community and those that are transgender and anybody that doesn't think exactly like them and kiss the ring of Donald Trump. Is every Republican like that? Absolutely not. But the base of the Republican Party is, and if you don't believe me, look at the Republicans that are in office today. So many of them that are in a MAGA cult. The big faces of the Republican Party, they're not lawmakers, they're noisemakers. Gymnasium Jordan, DUI Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, two-toe Marjorie Taylor Greene, or is it three-toe? I can't remember. These are the faces of the Republican Party. The GOP speaker, Mike Johnson, who is an evangelical zealous nut job. What normal human being has a child, a son, a daughter, a teenager, and they have some porn, I guess you could call it some sort of, it's called your accountability partner, where you have an app on your phone so that you both can see if either of you are looking at pornography? What reasonable, normal human being does that? Listen, I get it. I'm not saying that children should be looking at porn. I totally understand that. But what reasonable human being would have an app like that? It's beyond weird, and it's crazy. And again, Mike Johnson is a perfect example of what I am talking about. Talks about his faith all the time. But when it comes to gun control, no answers. When it comes to gun control, Second Amendment rights. Mike Johnson, Perfect example of what I am talking about. Talks about his faith constantly. He's the guy that tried to overturn the outcome of the 2020 election. He is the criminal. He is the liar. He is the scapegoat. He is the guy that wears the Donald Trump knee pads. If you really want an accountability partner, I would tell Mike Johnson to get off his knees and stop wearing the Donald Trump knee pads. If you want to talk about accountability partner. What happened to America after Donald Trump took office? What happened to this country? Make America great again? Let me tell you something. There's no other country I'd rather live in the world than the United States of America. We have freedoms that very few have in this world. I'm very happy that I live in this country. With that being said, when was America great? When women couldn't vote? When black people were owned? Really, I want to know your characterization. When was America great? You think Donald Trump is the guy that's going to make America great again? Donald Trump is what's wrong with America. Greed, sins, criminality, lies, a liable rapist. Donald Trump is exactly what's wrong with America. He's the example of what's wrong with this country, how we allow people like this to become quote unquote leaders. Was January 6th great for America? Attacks on our democracy, was that great for America? Well, Brian, I like some of his policies. He ran in 2016 on 2 policies. And by the way, this isn't an opinion. This is a fact. Donald Trump in 2016, when he was running against Hillary Clinton, ran on 2 policies. Those policies were, we're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it, and we're going to lock up Hillary Clinton. I'm going to hire a special prosecutor. Let's start with Hillary. How did that work out? Not only was she not indicted, not charged with a crime, he never hired a special prosecutor because she didn't break the law. And if there was evidence that she did, you mark my words, Donald Trump would have hired that special prosecutor. He ran on that. That was a lie. Would you call that a failed policy? The second one. We're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. Donald Trump built 16% of the wall. Let me repeat, 16% of the wall, and Mexico didn't pay $1 for it. So wouldn't you call that failed policy? Now, I'll say this. Donald Trump did an okay job of not ruining a great economy that he received thanks to Barack Obama. Donald Trump took over a great economy. Did you see the economy that Joe Biden took over? I don't blame Donald Trump for COVID. I blame Donald Trump for his response to COVID when he turned press conferences, coronavirus press conferences, into campaign rallies. He spent more time during those coronavirus press conferences attacking Joe Biden than he actually talked about the seriousness of COVID. You can't deny that. Possibly injecting yourself with disinfectant. And then the next day said he was joking about it. 15 cases down to 0. It's going to be gone by Easter. Those are the words of Donald Trump. Those aren't my words. The way Donald Trump reacted to his response to COVID was an F-, and hundreds of thousands of lives those people would still be on this planet today. I don't blame Donald Trump for every death. I don't blame him for COVID. I blame him for the response. And if you want to give him credit for Operation Warp Speed, then riddle me this. Why do so many of his supporters anti-vaccination? Why is it that Donald Trump and Melania Trump privately went to get their COVID shots? Why is that? Why are so many within the Republican Party today in office talk about anti-vaccine, when just about all of them were vaccinated? Because they're hypocrites. That's why. You can't give Donald Trump credit for Operation Warp Speed at the same time if you're anti-vaccine and you think it's poison, which, by the way, it's not. And it's another reason why I would never vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It is a cult that you are in. If you can't look me in the eye and tell me that Donald Trump is a bad guy, then I can't have a conversation with you. Or it's going to be very difficult to have a conversation with you. If you want to talk about some of his policies, listen, I know extremely wealthy people, some really wealthy people, that will admit to me that some of Donald Trump's policies worked for them, and I don't doubt that. But Donald Trump's economic policies, for the most part, worked for the top 1%. They did not work for middle America. They didn't work for people paycheck to paycheck. Donald Trump gave tax breaks to the top 1% like so many of the Republicans do. And if the argument is, well, Brian, the top 1%, they create jobs and they pay more taxes than anybody else. No, they don't. They pay a less percentage. You know what's so pathetic about some of the taxes in this country and the loopholes in this country is that the CEO of a Fortune 500 company is paying a less percentage taxes than a family household income of $50,000 a year. That is wrong. And you can't blame Democrats for that because Republicans have been giving the tax breaks to the ultra elitist and the rich people for decades and decades and decades. Is that Christian? Is that Christian to keep giving the tax breaks to the top 1% of people in this country? Don't you give me this nonsense about, oh, Donald Trump and his policies worked. No, they didn't. And the criticisms of Joe Biden are a joke when it comes to so many on the far right. You want to talk about, oh, well, look at what happened in Afghanistan. Bolton, who worked in the Trump administration, has said point blank in almost every interview that Donald Trump's policies of withdrawal in Afghanistan were virtually identical to Joe Biden. Is it a tragedy what took place in Afghanistan when we had those innocent people that died, those innocent soldiers? Yes, it was a tragedy. Were mistakes made? Absolutely. But you're going to blame Joe Biden for this. It's not Joe Biden's fault. If you're going to blame Joe Biden, then you got to blame Donald Trump. Exact same policy. Opening up the phone line, 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-7283 is the number to call if you would like to be a part of the conversation. Let's go to Roy, who's next. Hello, Roy.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. What's on your mind, Roy?
Well, my wife kind of just discovered your podcast, and I've been listening to it yesterday and today and felt compelled to call.
Sure, thank you.
One of the things, I'm a financial guy.
Okay.
And one of the problems, our whole tax system is out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest reasons, the ultra-wealthy make the vast majority of money on their investments.
Right.
And until they decide to sell their investments, it's not recognized. It's not taxable. So they're getting richer and richer and richer on their investments, but they're not paying a dime in taxes on it.
Right. Correct.
That's only one of the problems. The other problem is that last tax cut, which of course helped the top 1%, took the corporate taxes down from 35 to 21.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about why there's inflation? Of course, we know the pandemic created problems with the supply side.
Sure.
But this super large tax decrease on the corporations made them so greedy. All of a sudden, you take some of these major companies, these top 50 companies that make $100 billion in profit, and all of a sudden they're saving $14 billion in taxes.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Let me ask you a question.
Temporary.
Do you disagree with my, my explanation? I do blame Republicans for the rich getting richer in this country. I mean, would you agree with that characterization?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
there's
and
no,
you know,
no question about it.
Yeah, and that's
their thing. That's their agenda. What's their agenda? Their agenda is cut taxes, get rid of Obamacare, even though they have nothing to replace it. That was another one of Trump's promises to get rid of Obamacare.
When it comes to finance and when it comes to taxes, you're the type of person that I want to hear from because obviously you know what you're talking about. I'm not saying Democrats are perfect when it comes to this stuff, but for the most part, I think Democrats certainly help people that are struggling in this country a lot more than Republicans do. I think Republicans want to make the rich richer. Capitalism. They don't want to raise minimum wage. They don't have a replacement care plan for Obamacare. And we're on the same page, my man. Listen, it's good to hear from you. I'm glad you and your wife found the show. And I hope both of you call anytime, okay?
Do you know what the federal minimum wage is in this country?
What is it?
It's $7 and change.
That's pathetic.
That's a federal.
It's pathetic. It gets me so angry to hear you say that. I know you're right. And it's like, how could anybody who calls themselves a person of faith of God be okay with that? Because I'm not okay with it. I'm not even a very religious person.
Neither am I.
Yeah.
And I'm truly independent. I really hate just about everybody.
I hear you,
but
my man.
The truth of the matter is, the whole system, the whole electoral college is wrong.
I'm with you, my man. I got to get to my next call. I got to get to my next caller. Sorry to cut you off, but I appreciate you guys finding my show, and you call back anytime, okay, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good to hear from you. Thank you. Got to move to some other callers. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Brenson, who's next on Pushing the Limits. Hello, Brenson.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What's on your mind?
Hey, so know you have a great micro influencer account, like a JV propaganda thing, but everything you're saying, it just shows that you don't understand taxes. I own a business. My business gets taxed, and I personally get taxed. Everybody likes to forget about.
So did I say if you own a business, you don't get taxed? When have I ever said that?
You parrot the same thing.
What did I say that was factually inaccurate?
All of these corporations and stuff, they
never
get
said
tax
all
breaks.
these corporations, so you're now mischaracterizing what I said.
Tax breaks?
I never said all of these corporations. I never used that term. So if you're going to say that I don't know what I'm talking about, tell me what I said that's not factually accurate, and don't make up quotes. I'm glad you own a business, sir. I'm glad you're successful.
If a business gets a tax break, does not mean that I personally get a tax break on my personal income.
Okay, so what did I say that's factually inaccurate? Because you've now misquoted me, and I'm waiting.
Well, why don't you clarify where I'm wrong of what you stated?
I'm not the one making a claim, calling into your show, saying that what you said is wrong. You just started. Okay, I'm going to try to be calm here, sir. This is my problem with people
I
like
don't
you.
care if you get worked up,
If
man.
you
That's
I'm going to tell you
thing.
why I get worked up. Because you just called into a show saying,
you don't have emotional
are you going to be
control, you
quiet
don't
and
know
let
what-
me answer, or are you going to continue to interrupt me? Be quiet. You called into this show and said, I don't know what I'm talking about because you own a business. Sir, first of all, just because you own a business doesn't mean you know everything there is to know about taxes, and Brian is wrong. Number two, you had the opportunity to quote me something directly that I said that's not correct. And you misquoted me and you screwed that all up. So the first 30 seconds of this phone call made you sound like a fool. I'll keep you on the line, and I want you to ask me again and make a quote from what I said that is completely wrong. What did I say that's wrong?
Actually, where I wanted to start, Donald Trump is a loser. Never worked for anything. So my first question is, can you name some notable accolades, accomplishments you've done in your life?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, I'll tell you something I haven't done, and then I'll go to some things that I have done. No, you're going to be quiet and you're going to listen now because I'm going to answer the question the way I want to, because it's my show and not yours. And I'm smarter than you because I have a radio show, according by your logic. Pot him down. I'm going to answer his question. I've never been accused of sexual assault. Donald Trump's been accused, 25 women, of sexual assault. I've never been convicted to be a liable rapist civilly in a courtroom. Donald Trump has. I've never been sued. I've never attacked POWs. I've never attacked women on looks. I've never dodged the military. I've never done any of these things. And by the way, my father never showed up to Klan rallies either. I'm not a racist. I would never say, I don't want black people counting my money in my casinos. I want Jews counting my money, because I wasn't raised like that. I don't have several ex-wives and kids from different marriages. I've never cheated on anybody before. Now, those are the things I haven't done. I know you're very proud, sir, of those accomplishments of Donald Trump. Okay? I treat women with respect. I try to treat anybody with respect no matter what their sexuality is. I try to treat anybody with respect no matter where they came from or what they look like. I'm proud of those accomplishments, and you're the type of guy that probably thinks only be proud of how much money you have, right? Is that right, sir? Because you own a business, and that must mean you know more than me, right, buddy?
I own a business.
Congratulations, sir, because you own a business, you must know everything, and everybody else knows nothing. You haven't said one intelligent thing in this entire phone call.
I'm waiting for your accomplishments.
I just gave them to you, you dumbass. Have a nice day. Have a nice day, you MAGA cultist. I'm waiting for your accomplishments. Stupid idiot. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Brandon. Brandon is next.
Well, hello again, Brian. It's good to hear from you again.
That guy got me fired up.
I know, and so does everybody else that listens to your show. I have to say, I think it's really remarkable how you get these fools out here to sit here and try to defend something that they know is wrong. I know is wrong, and I'm going to just say this. I'm proud to be a damn Democrat. Let me just say that off the rip. And you know what? I've never been into much of politics and stuff like that, but in my eyes, this is what I see. When you have a man like Donald Trump in office, all you see is a dictatorial man. This man talked all that shit to everybody on national television, to all his friends and all the people that he wanted to impress. Remember, like I said this before and I'll say it again, when you're voting for somebody, You have to make sure whoever you're putting in this office, this chair, is running our country. No, he's not God. No, he's not Jesus Christ. No, he's not the freaking Easter Bunny. But our lives, everybody's lives in the United States for that matter, is in your hands. And it's the same thing over and over. Why am I voting for you? All these politicians, you're battling each other, making fools of yourselves on national television.
Yeah.
This guy's going to do this. He's going to do that.
Well,
He's gonna do,
it's
well, what
interesting.
the hell are you going to do to make it better?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. No, you're right. Isn't it interesting? Because that last caller is a perfect example of what I would call a MAGA cultist and their attitude. It comes from a playbook of Donald Trump, where he calls in and he says, because I own a business, for all I know, that guy can own a lemonade stand on the corner of the street. The guy says he owns a business. So because he owns a business, I don't know what I'm talking about. And then he asked me for some of my.
You own a business,
right? And then he asked me what my
doesn't give you the right to act like a fool,
right? And then he asked me what my accomplishments, and I try to answer the question because I know that's a guy that voted for Donald Trump twice. That's a guy who probably pleasures himself to a Donald Trump poster in his bedroom every night, and he wants to talk about accomplishments. And I started by answering the question: things that I haven't done, or things in my life that I've never been accused of. And I rolled down the list of Donald Trump, but that's the guy who probably admires Donald Trump.
And you know what's so sad? I just have to throw this in there. You guys voted for a man who doesn't give a damn about nobody.
Right.
This man literally during the whole entire January 6th, and we all remember this, and I don't know if you heard this, but I remember, and I quote, "We're going to storm the Capitol." What the hell did all his followers think when he said this? Did you really honestly think that all those pepperheads out there wasn't going to do what he said? We're going to storm the Capitol. And what happened that night?
Well, you know what? That's Donald Trump's base.
People got hurt. People got injured.
No, you're right. People died.
People
Listen,
hung on to that man's every word. It's ridiculous.
You're right. There are still people that characterize January 6th as a tourist visit. Now, there were a percentage of people that attacked police officers that day. Over 140 officers were injured. There are Republicans in office today that feel bad for the people that went to jail for literally beating police officers. You can't make this stuff up, but I am glad that there are people out there like you that are sensible, logical people that tell the truth. I need more callers like you. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I love my callers, even my very special MAGA callers.
That's why I keep calling in. I love your show.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate that. I hope you have a wonderful New Year, okay?
You too, man. I'll be calling in again.
Good to hear from you. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, got to end the phone calls for now. There have been some interesting ones today. There are every day, by the way. There's no question about that. But the guy that we have on the line with us right now is somebody that you know very well. If you're a poker fan, if you're an average poker fan, if you're a poker aficionado, no matter who you are, you know who this guy is. He's been one of the best players of poker in the world over the course of the last couple decades. Very accomplished poker player. But I also wanted to have him on because I like talking about world events with him and politics and news and you name it. Of course, I'm talking about Real Kid Poker, Daniel Negreanu joining us right now. Daniel, it's good to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good. Let's try to. We got to get your energy. Do some breathing. You got a little heated with that caller. I was in the back room listening.
You know what? I shouldn't let them get to me. I'm on, as you would say in the poker world, I'm on radio tilt right now, I guess you could say. But hey, that happens from time to time. I get people calling in that try to get me going, and unfortunately, sometimes they succeed. Anyway, before I start with any serious topics, how was your Christmas, my friend? Did you spend it here in Vegas?
I did. It's beautiful. I'm here in my new office. We moved over to Lake Las Vegas. Got a beautiful home out here. Love the area. It's like a little bit of a small town vibe in a big city like Las Vegas. So very happy, very chill, just with the wife.
That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. Christmas is, usually it's about spending time with family and having a good time. Are there Christmases, I would imagine, in your life where you were playing poker?
No, I don't think I've ever, actually. That's funny you say that. Maybe like when I was, at a Christmas party with some friends, and they've got a little poker game going after, but not like anything serious. No.
I heard a story online that a couple months back you went to a home game in Vegas. Is that true? Like a kid's home game?
that got a lot of positive attention. I was walking the dogs and some kid who's wearing a suit, looked like a Mormon, he's a suit and tie. And I'm like, what? It's like 18. And he walks up to me and he says, hey, we're going off to college, me and my group of friends. Would you be willing to stop by and, play poker with us? And I'm like, I don't know. I asked my wife. She says, go do it. So I grab a bunch of hoodies. I counted how many they were. And I brought a hoodie for each of them, played a little poker with them. And these kids were not your typical kids. I went around the room and said, like, where are you going? Where are you going? And you're talking Harvard, all Ivy League schools. We got the biochemists. We got world changers in this room. I was in awe of them.
That's pretty cool, though. That's really cool that you did something like that. All right, so I'll ask you a few poker questions a little bit later. Let's talk about issues facing the planet, the world. I wanted to get your thoughts first because you're an opinionated guy. What do you think about Donald Trump being left off the ballot in Colorado? What are your thoughts on that?
So here's the problem with it. I think we've sort of the question is this: is he really being left off the ballot because he paid off some porn stars? Is he really being left off the ballot because he had some classified documents? If I believe that, that would be one thing. I don't. I think it's sort of like unmasks this is what our true intentions are, which is to not let Trump run, right? And that is a win for him, right? Maybe this being done a long time ago, when the issues were hot, made a lot more sense. But at this point, I think you've just handed him a victory because it's going to get overturned anyway. But all it does is show your hand. And I think there was 7 people on the Colorado Supreme Court, and they were all Democrats. 4 of them were Ivy League, and 3 of them were not. The 3 of them vehemently said, guys, this is a bad idea. And the 4 Ivy League guys who were super smart, except big idiots, said, no, let's go ahead and do this. And I think it's just going to leave them with egg on their face.
I tend to agree with you, but with that being said, do you put responsibility or any responsibility on Donald Trump for what took place on January 6th?
Of course, right? But here's the issue with him, right? I remember when he first started running, every 3 days, we got him. We got him. Well, we got him this time. And all it did was fuel his popularity, right? So at some point, you got to realize, you have to think strategically, politically about what's the best move to not have him be the president. And stuff like this, these kind of publicity stunts, if you will, more than anything, they're only going to aid and abet. So really we're doing more damage than good, I think. But yeah, of course, the words are clear. The things that he said, and leading up to it, let's march, the Capitol, and then what ended up happening, of course he bears responsibility. But do I think that we should at this point, go after that? I think it's a loser.
Yeah. For those of you that are unaware, Daniel is from Canada. He's Canadian, grew up a big Toronto Maple Leafs fan. I wanted to ask you, Daniel, obviously you have a lot of friends and family in Canada. What do they think of what's going on with American politics in general? What's the census of most people in Canada that you talk to, friends, family? What do they think of Trump? What do they think about what's going on in this country?
Well, you'd be shocked to know that Canada, there's similarities. Toronto is the most multicultural city in the world. So compare that to a New York or California. But we also have rural areas like Alberta, Calgary, Edmonton, and those are where the cowboys are. And that's where there isn't a melting pot. That's where, you have a lot of old school nationalist Canadian types, and they're big Trump fans, So, we had the trucker convoy issue going on, and there was, that was politically aligned with one side versus the other. But overall, I just think that they think, it's grandiose here. And, it's all pop and circumstance. It's all political theater. When you watch Canadian politics and you watch how they converse, it's like, well, damn you, we're going to have speed bumps on these roads. If it, it's like they're talking about actual issues that affect people a lot more than we do.
I wanted to read one of your tweets that you put out because I thought it was very interesting, and I tend to agree with you. You said, if your thoughts align entirely with either political party, they are hardly your own thoughts at all. It's nearly impossible. Too many go to their tribe and find out what they should think and then parrot the talking points as gospel. No critical thinking takes place. And I agree with you. I think it's one of the main reasons why things never get done in Washington, because you have the Republicans and the Democrats bickering and fighting with each other. And I thought what you said, it really rings true to what's going on politically in this country right now.
Yeah. The perfect example would be, where did COVID come from? Right. So if you believe that it came from a lab, that's your theory. That means you're a Republican racist, right? Yeah. If you believe it came from bats, that means you're a Democrat. How about the answer is this? I don't know. It might have come from a lab, and it doesn't make me racist to say so. I mean, there was a coronavirus lab in there. There seems to be some evidence. We're trying to find out what it is. But what happens today is people know what tribe they're on. They go to their sort of sources, and that's where they get their views on things. So they're not actually doing any critical thinking on their own about each individual issue. They're just being, told what to think. And anytime you come across someone who 100% agrees with progressive ideals or conservative ideals, they're not doing any thinking. They are just completely indoctrinated, and they're not worth discussing anything with, because you're not going to change their mind either.
Agree. And I'm sure you'll agree with me. If COVID never became political, so many more lives would have been saved. And I think I talked to brilliant doctors and nurses when I was in the hospital with COVID. And they said literally people on almost their last breath said that they didn't believe that COVID was real. I mean, some of these, and I'm not saying, by the way, some of this stuff doesn't happen on the left either.
Well, I mean, look at the new QAnon on the left. The Holocaust was over exaggerated.
Right.
What Hamas did was justified. Over 51% of those polled at, between the ages of 18 to 24. So you're right. So the key issue is like you look at both extremes, and what you end up finding is they both come full circle with a common enemy, and it always ends up being the Jews. First it was the Jews, Jewish religion, and now it's the Jewish state. There's different ways in which they unveil their hatred of Jews. It's been going on for centuries and thousands of years, and it continues to do so today. You see what's going on in Syria with hundreds of thousands of Muslims being killed. In Sudan, the Uyghurs, the Kurds, they're all being killed. You don't see any rallies in the streets at all about this stuff. You know why? The common denominator? Because it's not, Jews at the other side of those conflicts.
Daniel, I think anybody has a responsibility to be factually accurate, not spread misinformation, but especially people that are prominent figures, somebody like yourself. You have a very large platform because of your accomplishments in poker. And I appreciate your opinions, but I know you just don't throw things at a wall and hope that it sticks. You do your homework and you share your opinions. And then you have other people out there. And listen, I'm just going to mention this name in the poker world because I think he's probably one of the most hated people in poker today. Not for his antics at the poker table, but the things he says away from the poker table. You know, I'm going to say Justin Bonomo. And he says these absurd, ridiculous things on social media, particularly let's start with Israel, where he said, to this day, I have not heard a suggestion of what Hamas should have done instead. And I look at that statement and I say to myself, maybe not kill innocent people. I mean, and he has a platform. Let's be honest. He's an accomplished poker player, like him or not, which I don't. But I mean, don't you think when you have a large platform, especially, you can't say things like that?
Well, here's the thing. He said that in that tweet. And if you read on, he also claims that there was only one credible rape charge. Okay. Later, just yesterday or on Christmas Day, he put out this new message, where he says, early on in the conflict, I questioned whether or not there was rapes. He did it again 5 days ago, saying the claims were dubious. So here's the faction, right? The same group of people during the Me Too movement that said, believe women, now must add an asterisk, believe women unless they're Jewish, right? The hypocrisy, like for me, that tweet alone or that post was, for me personally, that's where he was canceled in my eyes forever. I can no longer take this person seriously. I don't engage with them. I call him Justin Jihadimo because he's pro-jihad, whether he likes to think so or not. So it shows you where this ideology, where this extreme progressive, quote unquote, woke ideology gets dangerous. When you're now looking at TikTok and seeing the letter to America from bin Laden and going, yeah, maybe bin Laden was a swell guy. And every time he speaks of Hamas, he does so in a way that's like, oh, sure, they did some things, we did some things, as though, well, boys will be boys, we're, every once in a while you're going to slit a breast, cut them off, and, rape a girl or two, such is life.
But, obviously I'm not worried about educated people like you, people that actually have a brain that can fact check people and don't just believe what they hear. I'm worried about the people out there that maybe are uneducated, people out there that might be influenced by somebody that Justin Bonomo. They'll read something like that, and then they're the types of people that will be taking posters down across the country of innocent Israelis that were kidnapped. That's the dangers of what a Justin Bonomo or really anybody extremist that seems to feel for people of Hamas and be on the side of Hamas.
Yeah, you're not putting that, whatever you call it, back in the can because it's everywhere. It's all over social media. You look at TikTok specifically, right? And, when people push back against TikTok, it's like, well, let's think about this for a minute. TikTok is a Chinese-owned company that is allied with Russia and Iran. Iran's, tentacle arm is Hamas. So it's not a coincidence that TikTok is pushing out, pro-Hamas propaganda and subversing anything that's pro-Israel. So what happens is these young kids of today are completely indoctrinated and brainwashed. And there's actually laws against doing this. Foreign entities cannot own media companies in the United States, but that's exactly what TikTok does. The TikTok that's available to the Chinese children is different than what they give us. They understand the weapon that it is, and we are weaponizing. So many of these kids marching have no idea what they're marching for, and so many of them don't realize that Justin Bonomo himself, if he walked the street with a man and a woman in his eyes because he's polyamorous with his pink hair, he would be dragged through the streets. This isn't hyperbole. Dragged through the streets.
No, you're right.
And then thrown off a roof. And while that's happening, he would be crying tears saying, please, IDF, come and save me from these brutal savages that are murdering me right now for who I am. Walk across the street to Israel, there's pride parades and a welcoming, actual, open society and a democracy.
So what is it with him and people like him? Are they just ignorant to understanding that? Because you're 100% correct. Or do they just try to not understand it, or they just don't want to talk about it? They don't want to admit it? Or is he just uneducated on the issues?
Well, you go down a rabbit hole, whatever rabbit hole you take, far left or far right, and then you find through that rabbit hole excuses, So his is going to be, well, is that okay for, is that an okay reason to kill a bunch of people? And the idea that, Israel is indiscriminately bombing. If they were indiscriminately bombing, this war would have been over on October 8th. Okay. Yeah. They are not indiscriminately bombing. There's pamphlets being sent. There's, escape routes. They're doing everything they can, more so than any other army's been asked to do in history. Whether it was us, when we were, in the search to destroy Hitler, and many innocent Germans died and people around the world. War is ugly. Innocent people do die. On one side of this conflict, Israel protects its people. It does everything it can to protect its people. The leaders in Hamas that are in Qatar right now profit from this death. They actively want their young to die because they see them as martyrs. And it's a blessing to be a martyr because you get 40 virgins in a hop, step, and a jump up there in the heaven that they believe exists.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. You mentioned Adolf Hitler. I wanted to ask you this question. Do you think it's fair to make any sort of comparison, at least to the verbiage lately, that Donald Trump has used and put forth any similarities to an Adolf Hitler? Do you think that's fair?
Not really. I mean, obviously you can sort of stretch and, twist anything that Hitler says and attribute it to anyone pretty much. I don't think that's a smart move anyway, to sort of go down that route, because whenever you compare somebody to Hitler, it's a very serious accusation, it's a very serious thing. And obviously, there are dog whistles, if you will, there's undertones of, there's good people on both sides that we've heard over the last, who knows how years. But I just personally believe that he's more just of like a populist that goes with the flow. And he similar to like this absolute nut job, Vivek. Yeah. Vivek is the guy, you talked about throwing shit against the wall. He throws everything. Any conspiracy theory, he just throws everything. He's all over the map. He's kind of incoherent in his positions and all that sort of stuff. But he's following that same mold of, what do people get riled up about? Let's give them more of that meat.
Yeah, it's interesting. Vivek, he did this show a few months ago, and I agree with everything you just said, by the way. I think he's about ready to jump out of the presidential race, and he wants to be Donald Trump's running mate. He is a mini puppet for Donald Trump. I wouldn't call him anything more than that. I believe him to be a fraud, but he does appeal to some young people on the far right, and I do believe he is also very dangerous. For example, he says that everybody that's transgender is mentally ill. He says that January 6th was an inside job. To me, he's no different than an Alex Jones, and yet he has some support. And I do believe he's going to be the person that Donald Trump is going to pick as his vice president. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Because when you think of Trump, Trump is very much a man that wants it to be all about him. Like, he didn't like when Mike Pence was stealing any thunder from him. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think that he probably appreciates Vivek being his biggest lapdog. Having said that, Vivek takes up a lot of space in a room too. And he won't take a back seat. And I don't think that will vibe personally with Trump. So I don't see it. And besides, listen, let's be real. Much of Trump's base or much of Trump's appeal, they're not going to vote for that guy. He's not one of them, without going too far down that rabbit hole of why.
I know where you're going there, and I certainly agree with you. With that said, is there anybody running for president on the right now of the several that are left that you could see yourself voting for? Any of them?
Yeah, no, I don't think so, because it's like, for me, it's more about, political, policy. Having said that, there are more palatable people than others, right? Like, I mean, obviously Ron DeSantis was a, controversial figure, and he's just been a really bad politician. He's not very good at this sort of thing. The one that's had appeal to a lot of people that seems more centrist and more common sense, which I think is really going to appeal to a lot of people, is Nikki Haley, who's at least trying to have conversations and be somewhat, and she's staying away from the fringes. I think, personally, I think, I do think to some degree the middle is what's going to be the deciding factor in 2024, more so than the extremes, because the extremes are the extremes. There's no changing those people's minds. But right now, there is a whole group of, moderate liberals and moderate Republicans that could go either way. depending on who you put forth.
Well, Daniel, you're a betting man, so I wanted to ask you this then. If you had to say who is the overwhelming odds-on favorite, who do you think is going to be the 2024 president? I would assume it's going to be Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. Does Joe Biden win?
No, I don't think he does. I don't think he does.
Really? Tell me why you feel that.
I think virtually any other Democrat wins. I think I think Biden was perfect. The perfect guy, perfect remedy to Trump 4 years ago. A little bit older now, and for some reason, whatever reason, I mean, listen, they're about the same age, but Biden appears more frail to people. There's this idea of him, being senile or not all there. In addition to that, for some reason, and I can't put my finger on it, but like Kamala Harris appears to be incredibly unpopular, even amongst the Democratic base. Like they feel like she hasn't done much. So when you think of voting for Biden at his age, you're thinking of, well, Kamala might be next, right? So I think that, I've seen some of the push from other, Democratic candidates or whatever saying, maybe it's time that you let somebody else run, whether it's a Gavin Newsom or whoever, this Dean guy or whatever. But I think that people generally do this. Like they always are asked, like, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? They always say no matter what, right? It might not be true, but that's the feeling. So this is where you bring feelings to a fact fight. What Biden's actually accomplished and the good he's done is going to pale in comparison to general, emotional feelings for people. And a lot of people, I've actually unfortunately spoken to a lot of people that voted for Biden that I know won't be this time for a few reasons. Afghanistan, they didn't like the way in which we pulled out and left a lot of, our allies just to die, like the interpreters and different people that supported us there, and a few other issues. And obviously that was going to be messy no matter who was in charge. And the fact that he did it, he should get some credit for it. It was already put into motion by Trump. But ultimately, I do have concern that he isn't going to be, like, if they debate Trump versus Biden, I think that'll be difficult for Biden. So
this is interesting. Now, the people that you spoke to that said that they voted for Joe Biden, I understand they're saying they're not going to vote for him again, but they would vote for Donald Trump.
I think some of them would, yeah. And I think some of them ultimately see Trump as kind of like less of a boogeyman than maybe they once did, in terms of, the rhetoric and all this sort of thing. They see him as maybe less of a danger. Like, I don't know. Like, and a lot of them will point to this, and they use this as a talking point. Under Trump, there was peace in the Middle East. There was no wars. And, Joe Biden's in there. And now we started World War III or whatever the case may be. Obviously, it's not Biden's fault. And Trump, wasn't the messiah to keep it from happening. However, perception's reality for a lot of people. True. So I think at this point, and I think a lot of it, too, has to do with what we're seeing, like on the progressive left, of like the issues they find to be the most important, right? Like, really? Like some of these things, and I'm not even going to bring them up, but some of them are just like so far from what matters to most people who are trying to put food on the table.
Well, I'll bring up a few. I interview Republicans all the time. And I think in 2023 and heading into 2024, all I hear from Republicans are the transgender gender ideology, how drag queens are the worst thing that America's ever seen, and that our public school systems and teachers are indoctrinating our kids, and, gender bathrooms and all that other stuff. And Hunter Biden's laptop, let's not forget about that. These seem to be the things that MAGA Republicans want to talk about. I'd like to think that Democrats represent today what they represented 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I'm not saying Democrats are all perfect, but for the most part, they talk about equality, race relations. They want to raise the minimum wage. They talk about, livable health care. And I think, inflation, gas prices, the economy, unemployment. And for the most part, I think they stick to a woman having the right to do what she wants to do with her body. They stick to issues that I think most Americans care about. And I think that's why Republicans have lost 6 of the last popular vote presidential elections. That's what I think.
Yeah. So I would say when it comes to the culture wars and some of the things you mentioned, I say that I think one of the reasons they parrot that is because it's a winning issue for them. I really do. I think because in some cases you push too far with some of the nonsense, right? Obviously, I believe that women should have the right to choose. Obviously, I don't care if you want me to call you he or she. Now, if you're asking me to call you ze, zer, them, and they, you're starting to go down a road of like, okay, we'll hold the phone here, Maybe it's still too far, right?
Right.
Right. So, and a lot of, I think those issues, they see them as winning issues because a lot of parents do see things happening in schools where, you can be both accepting and supportive of people that are struggling with gender dysphoria, and also ask yourself, okay, well, got that. This is a world we live in now. So like, how do we make this work, right? Is it right for, a 16-year-old boy to be wrestling against a 16-year-old girl? Like, so this is the thing, right? So then when you dig deep into these issues, and then you have like some on the extreme left saying there's no physical difference between men and women.
Yeah,
like I've actually heard this college-educated kids saying there is no physical advantage for a man over a woman. It's like, what are you babbling about? Ask Serena Williams. She'll tell you the greatest female tennis player of all time. She can't beat number 1,000. She knows. She understands.
Yeah,
but when they make these arguments, then you have to start asking yourself, like, what are you saying? Because you don't sound sane right now.
No, that's extreme. And Justin Bonomo would probably make a statement like that. But anyway, you're the perfect person to ask this question. I remember years back, Daniel, the ladies event in the World Series of Poker. You're the perfect person to ask this, where ladies are supposed to be playing in this event, yet you had some men that played. They had to put up, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 10 times the money, and they dressed like in a dress. And I just thought it was an embarrassment. And there's just certain things that you just shouldn't do. I thought it was a really bad look. Do you remember that? And what did you think about that?
So actually the loophole was fixed this way, because legally you have to be very, very careful about running male or female events. Like there were certain rules against that. So back then it was a $1,000 buy-in and men just bought in, I'm a woman. Cool. Okay. Well, what they did was they said, it's an open event. It's $1,000 for ladies. If you're a man and you want to play, it's $10,000. So you could still do that. You could be that jerk off if you want to, but it's going to cost you $10K. So, you're not going to win on that regard. Now, the interesting issue is coming up now with a lot of some poker players who are transgender. And the question is like, the ones that were, biological males that are now transitioned to female, can they play? And I think the way in which legally they went about that is it's based on what your driver's license says. And I think that's, kind of it's a fair, it's a very difficult conversation to have. It's very, confusing for a lot of people. And this is where I think it's really important for those that are progressive and they want to sort of further the conversation is you have to be understanding of people that are 50, 60, 70 years old that lived a certain way. And now you're coming at them with a whole bunch of new stuff. Patience. Okay. Don't just call the 70-year-old man who tells the waitress, hey, honey, can you bring me some more sugar? And call him a sexist, fascist, vile human being. Just being, so you have, intent matters, and as long as people are arguing about these things from a place of good faith, like I do, like, when it comes to the sports issue, I want like, well, what is the fairest way? And I try to think of these things.
Yeah,
sure. You're called a transphobe because you don't think maybe it's right that a 16-year-old male, biological male, wrestles against the female. Now you're labeling, if you will.
That's an extreme view, just like I think it's an extreme view when Vivek Ramaswamy says if you're transgender you must be mentally ill. So I think there's certainly extreme views on both sides. Couple quick poker questions for you, because I know you never talk about poker. Before we let you go, your thoughts on Garrett Adelstein, known as one of the best cash game poker players in the world. He's back at it. He's made a comeback. What do you think about that? And do you think it's good for poker? And do you think to this point, he owes the poker community an apology for accusing somebody of cheating with no real evidence to back it up?
Okay, so I'm going to be completely honest with you. On a scale of 1 to 10, my level of give a shit on this topic is a 0. Like, I don't care at all. Like, I don't watch these streams. I know that a lot of people do, and they find it entertaining, and they enjoy watching him. And, he's an addition to the streams and whatnot. I don't care. Like, it's just not my world. I'm a tournament guy. I play tournaments. I don't delve into this, like, real drama. There's a whole bunch of drama with the Hustler Live Casino and Berkey and all these guys. I kind of just stay out of it because I don't find it interesting, frankly. But a lot of people do. They love to watch them, and so I have no problem with it at this point. It is what it is.
Yeah. No, I understand that, but here's a topic that I know you would find an important one, and that's cheating. Do I think the majority of poker players have cheated at one time or another? No. But as you know, cheating does happen in poker. People do get caught cheating. Do you think it happens more and we just don't hear about it? Or do you think it's an extremely rare occurrence, whether it be cash games or tournaments?
Well, let me ask you this question. Is there an avenue or a venue where people could make a lot of money, right? And they don't look for ways to gain an advantage or bend the rules. You're always going to find people like this. And in poker, you're always going to have that cat and mouse game. You're going to have regulators and you're going to have organizations trying to keep an eye on the cheaters, and they're going to try and stay one step ahead. Yeah. So yeah, it is simply human nature for people to do this. People cheat on their spouses, as you mentioned earlier that you don't, but bravo to you. But not everyone's built with the same moral compass. So yeah, it's something that you have to keep an eye on. And generally speaking, the poker community as a whole does a good job of policing itself. We catch these guys eventually. And again, maybe some we don't, but overall, it's just a cat and mouse game.
Well, Daniel, before I let you go, and I always appreciate the time. Next time, we're going to have to talk a little hockey. We're kind of running out of time here. But what do you got going on for New Year's Eve? And what's your schedule looking like? Where can we see Daniel Negreanu playing poker?
Well, I'm going to be relaxing for a little bit here. I put a lot of poker in last year, and I'm going to scale back significantly. Probably just going to be staying here in Lake Las Vegas. Still moving in, getting the house set up and, hanging out with the puppies and the wife and just, living a very homebody lifestyle.
Cool. Well, hey, there's nothing wrong with that, my man. Always appreciate your perspective, and I always like to ask you all sorts of different questions other than poker, because I know that's basically what you talk about in a lot of these interviews. So I always like hearing your perspective on all sorts of different things. But hey, I hope you have a great New Year for you and your family. And next time, let's get you on, maybe talk a little VGK hockey, my man. I always appreciate the time. Thank you.
All right, you got it. No problem.
Appreciate it. That's Daniel Negreanu, everybody, one of the world's best poker players for decades. But as I always say on this show, really intelligent guy, and I really like picking his brain on a number of different issues, not just poker. And that's why I really enjoy talking to him. Wow, we've covered a lot of topics on this show, and we're approaching 2024. And I want to go into 2024 with an open mind. And it's interesting because some people on the feed said, well, Brian, you say you treat everybody with respect, but you just yelled at that last caller. Let me try to explain to you, now that I have a few minutes here, the difference. When somebody calls into a show or has a conversation with me, it could be on the radio or social media, and they lie or they misrepresent something that I said. Example, starting a conversation by saying, I know more than you because I'm a business owner. First of all, that's extremely disrespectful and stupid, right? And then they misquote you and they say something that I never said. That's why I get angry. That is a fool, or as I like to call that person, a buffoon. When I say I treat people with respect, I don't look down on people or judge people because of the color of their skin, because of their sexual orientation. I don't judge people by what they look like. I don't judge people things that are out of their control. I feel like a lot of Donald Trump's base do that. Now, I can judge you by your actions. I could judge you by your behavior, right? If you're a criminal, I can judge you on that behavior. But there's a difference between yelling at somebody based on something they say that isn't true or something they say that's just ridiculous, and judging somebody just based on their sexual orientation or the color of their skin or their religion or whatever. That's the definitive difference of what I'm talking about. I was raised to treat people as equals regardless of what they look like and regardless of what their religion is or what their sexual orientation is. That's the difference. You're damn right if somebody calls into this show and they say something from a bigoted point of view or a racist or an anti-Semitic statement. Oh yeah, I can judge somebody on their actions, right? But there's a fine line and a fine difference between judging somebody on their behavior or actions and then judging somebody based on their skin color or their sexual orientation. That's the point I was trying to make earlier with that caller who called in that got me riled up. There are people in society that think they are better than you because they own a business. They might think they're better than you because of the color of their skin. They might think they're better than you or you're a sinner because of your sexual orientation compared to theirs. That's what I'm talking about when I say we need to respect each other and treat each other with respect regardless of those views. That's the point I was trying to make. You're damn right if somebody calls in this story, into the show, and they spew their ignorance, you're damn right I'm going to call them out on it because that's what I do on this show all the time. We're almost running out of time here. I think we have a couple minutes left. Should I try to squeeze in one more phone call? All right, I got about 1 minute here. We'll go to JD, who's next. Hello, JD.
Yeah, I think you had a very shitty show today.
I can't even hear you on your phone. You sound like you're very muffled, sir. Would you? I don't even know what he just said. Something about my show that I guess he didn't like or something. I have no idea.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Is there anything intelligent you'd like to say in the last 2 minutes, or do you just want to use an ad hominem attack?
No, I just think you had a very show.
Okay. Well, I really don't care what your opinion is, JD. So have a nice day.
I know.
Have a nice day, sir. So if you don't know who that caller is, his name is JD. And he obviously never really has anything intelligent to say when he calls into any show, especially this one. Now, if you're a MAGA supporter who wears the Donald Trump knee pads just like JD does, then you're not going to like anything about my show because I speak facts on this show and truth on this show. And I call out Donald Trump. People like JD don't like that. They want to be in their right-wing echo chamber. I'm sorry. I just don't do that. I want to start by saying thank you all who are watching on all the social media platforms, including the Occupy Democrats Network. If you want to learn a little bit more about me, you can find me on YouTube, which is at PTL Radio Show. I'm very interactive on X, also formerly known as Twitter, at PTL Radio Show. I'm also on TikTok, where I post videos on a regular basis. So you can find me a little bit everywhere. So tomorrow's going to be very interesting. We have the former Nevada GOP chair coming on, and she's going to blast the current Nevada GOP chair. Why? Because Mike McDonald was just indicted, just pled not guilty, for a fake electorate scheme. So the former Nevada GOP chair is going to be, I guess you could say, calling him out. So it's going to be interesting. Her name is Amy Tarkanian. She's going to be joining us on the show tomorrow, and I have a lot of respect for Amy. She used to be a Donald Trump supporter, and she's come on the right side of history, and she's going to have some choice words for Mike McDonald, who is, again, facing charges of conspiracy and forgery when it comes to the fake electorate scheme. So she'll be joining us on the show tomorrow, so certainly looking forward to that. Again, as I mentioned before, I appreciate all of you watching us on all my social media platforms and those listening to us on the radio, on KSHP, on the FM and AM dial. Look forward to joining you tomorrow. My thanks, of course, to Real Kid Poker, Danny Negreanu, for taking the time to join us. It's always a good conversation with him. And we will see you tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, on the show. Same time, same place, on all the platforms you watched us or listened to us today. We'll be on those same platforms tomorrow. You have a great Wednesday, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, everybody, are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you